Hey everyone, Joey Altruda here, and guess what? I've got a very special presentation for you with some very special friends of mine for a long, long time. Yes, correct. I have Senor Amor with me and Joe Cheezee. You might know Joe Cheezee also as Joey Cheezee. That's how I knew him once upon a time. The artist formerly known as Joey Cheezee. Of course, being part of the LA lounge contingency of the 90's, people were always confusing us and thinking I was him and he was me. And somehow we kind of were able to take advantage of that in the press. Sometimes it wasn't to our best advantage reputation wise on both ends, but I just found an article recently. I was looking through a bunch of my old press clippings and I saw that someone mentioned the bands that I was in: Jump with Joey, Cocktails with Joey, Wonderful World of Joey. And I was like, no, that was Joe C's band. So
and how did he play bass with the rollerblades? How did he do that?
I don't know, but here we go. We're here to talk about the LA lounge revival scene of the 90's. And I know a lot of you were well into the lounge revival scene in various places around the globe. And some of you didn't have one in where you live because you didn't live where there was one. Or some of you are too young to have been in on it or weren't even born yet, for all I know. If you're here and you're one of those, you're one of the cool kids, right? So the other day I was looking through my archives and I found this. It's a flyer. This is what spawned this conversation. I'm going to peek around it. It's a flyer for a big show that was done in 1995 called Exotica 95. Here's another advertisement for it. Oh, am I doing it backwards, upside down? No, I thought I was upside down for a minute. Okay, that was made by an artist named Shag, everyone, who went on to be really big. He made a whole cottage industry out of this. To give you a little context as well, Senor Amor is a lounge DJ, but not just a lounge DJ. He's like the quintessential lounge DJ, but that's only one of the many genres that he covers as a DJ. And Joe Cheezee is a noted author, correct? And writer, former lounge singer, but you never know when you could get him out of retirement. Right. And basically an agent, what would you call it? A raconteur of sorts. So I won't bore you with all the details. I'll let the other two guys brag about themselves to you. This lounge Exoticon went on at the famous Park Plaza Hotel in Los Angeles, and right where MacArthur Park is, and it featured bands. I'm looking at the agenda here. Okay, this is the very middle page of this thing. I can't believe I saved this. I guess I knew it was coming. The Tiki Tones, The Wonderful World of Joey, with special blessing by Korla Pandit, Joey Altruda Sextet featuring Plaz Johnson, Samoan Fire Knife Dance and Slap Dance by Levine Malachi and Alad Teofilo. I know that guy. He was one of the Booyah tribe. For all you hip hop fans, one of them was, yeah. He was one of the Booyah tribe, the Phantom Surfers, Brother Cleve from Combustible Edison. Oh, and Combustible Edison. What? How did I miss that? I must have been in the other room. There were two rooms.
Right.
Warren Kolodny, bless his soul. Let's do this little tribute to Warren. We missed him dearly. Eddie Detroit Trio, DJ Cyrano, the Boardwalkers, Byron Werner. Oh, wow. Byron Werner's the author?
Yeah, author, musicologist.
Byron Werner wrote the book
Space Age Bachelor Pad.
Space Age Bachelor Pad, and also one of
the
Elevator Music.
Yeah.
He wrote a book called Elevator Music that's brilliant. Davy Allen and the Arrows, everyone. Come on. I mean, and of course, Senor Amor and Riley's Go-Go Girls, okay? This was all in one night. Can you believe that? And we're still here to talk about it. So here's a big advertisement in this about,
Oh, great.
this was right around when Cocktails with Joey was, should I do a speaker view so people could see this up close?
That you
Yeah,
are.
that's one too. I can't do it. Yeah. Anyways, you'll just have to look in the archives for this.
Did you make a live recording of that? Did Seidel do that? I thought he
Well,
did.
I did, but it's so washed out that, you know, it's so far away. But
Yeah.
you know, how about we dig into this roundtable discussion, because you know this is a time capsule. Let me just for a second just show a few of the things. There's a Korla Pandit ad. The ad that I just showed was for my record release party, where we did a tribute to Les Baxter with a 20-piece orchestra playing his original charts and things. There's a Vidiot ad in here. Remember Vidiot? So it was like a great place. This was such a golden age for having fun in Los Angeles when there were still a few parking spaces available. Oh, Esquivel, Cabaret Mañana was about to be released. You know, so Josie, I met, well, I've known Senor Amor since the late 80s, and Lost Treasures is in there.
Right.
Anyways, yeah, Senor Amor I've known since the late 80s, and Josie, I think I came to know you about 1990 because, well, I had read an article about Joey Cheezee and the Velveeta Underground, and I don't know where I read it. It was in like the LA Times or something. And then you came to one of my gigs at King, and we started talking. And I was like, oh, you're Joey Cheezee of the Velveeta Underground. Like, yeah, I was impressed. So.
And you were good enough to lend your whole band to the cowboy shows. That was it. I didn't have any.
Basically, like, I think you had been up in San Francisco, right? You had just relocated to LA, and so you were bandless, and you came up to me. I was doing Jump with Joey back then on every Wednesday night at the King, and here comes Joey and Josie, and basically he hired me and all the guys in the band.
That's right.
His band on Monday nights at Kelbo's. Okay, so I would kind of say that was probably the beginning of LA's kitschy, tiki, retro lounge scene. I mean, I don't recall there being things maybe right on the verge of it, right? Maybe there was stuff to begin with a little before that, but
Senor had his show for sure.
I've been doing the Molotov Cocktail Hour with Cyrano since 1988 on KXLU.
Right. KXLU FM. Numbers for the kids out in the audience. Give yourself a plug here.
Oh well,
on the air, 32.
Yeah, well, we're still even during the pandemic, we're broadcasting some reruns or rebroadcasts of old shows, and we're also making new shows now that'll be in the next few weeks. They'll be on the air, but it's every Tuesday night from 10 p.m. to midnight Pacific Standard Time.
Okay.
Are there any angry undergrads like trying to get a radio show and like, why does this guy have the thing for 30 years?
You know, we're really lucky that the faculty advisor for KXLU is there's a faculty advisor for the radio station is a big fan of ours, and we've been friends since, I mean, we've been doing the show since before she started, but she's been there for years and years and years, and she's a big fan of the show. So we're just kind of been grandfathered in. We haven't been there as long as Stella of Stray Pop,
right.
But pretty close.
Right,
and
she was there before there was a station. I mean, but honestly, like, it's all about who you know in this business. I'm telling you, like, you know, you've been doing this free gig at the college station for 32 years now, and you still have it.
That's right. Lucky us.
You know, and like, so Senor Amor had this show that Molotov Cocktail Hour that was playing this music. And like, let's give a little trajectory here. I'm going to go to you to kind of take the ball here for a minute. But Joe, like you were saying before we pushed record here, this was an outgrowth of punk rock, and having to do with thrift shop culture and people that would find these albums that were, you know, honestly, like a lot of them were just super dorky for so many years because of rock and rock and roll and everything. And it kind of did a flip and turned into the next punk, you know, in its own sweet little way. Ironically, as the millennial.
Well, it was kind of outsider art too, right? I mean, you were trained and you were a bit of an outlier, but for a lot of people who were sort of the first band I had, the Velveeta Underground, we were all slumming, and I mean, they were all. No one came out of, you know, learning how to do that music properly, so it had that kind of raw quality, and there was room for a lot of like, at least I wasn't, I mean, there was a punk rock element where there was a lot of tumult and chaos too, and that, you know, and that felt, you know, you felt like you had the freedom to do anything you wanted. Some people that were trying to do a very narrow, you know, take on what they interpreted that genre of music as, it's always, it kind of bored the hell out of me, but I always thought it was really fun because you could reinvent and do something original really out of that stuff. And really what happened, you know, in LA, the and correct me if you see it differently, I was basically, I moved to LA in 91. I was there for a couple of months, and I got taken to the King, you know, was definitely an inspiration seeing you guys there. But I had this idea because, you know, I used to do a little bit of, I had a little knowledge of PR. So I had this idea for sort of a PR stunt, and it was, we had created this lounge, this Society to Honor Lounge Cabaret or Schlock up in San Francisco, and thought about the notion of like a lounge hall of fame and honoring Louis Prima, one of your heroes. I still love your story about seeing him on the Merv Griffin show when you were a kid, and how that resonated with you when you were 8, 9. But it just so happened that Capitol was doing that reissue just at the same time. And Pat Tierney's calling in. Oh my gosh.
Don't pick it up, whatever you do.
I said it'd be great to have a disembodied Eddie Vegas voice. Dude, I don't know, whatever happened with that call he just I can't even see
you know we're gonna be on right now.
I said, God, it'd be fun to have an Eddie Vegas voice, but he called too late. I was going to do a little surprise. Too late. What happened was that I approached Capitol, and they had all this, you know, all this stock. They thought it was a great idea to honor Louis. And we thought, wouldn't it be cool to organize this event and then maybe replicate it every year? So we created the Lounge Hall of Fame. I reached out to Senor in Cyrano, and we met. Remember, where was that? In Polly's Pies in Santa Monica, Senor.
Yep.
And we sort of concocted that idea. What Senor didn't realize, it was also a publicity stunt to get, you know, knew me. So we remember we had that event. We had that guy Bob Shookman, that the Louis Prima fanatic. I wish someone had that videotape still. There was a retired
Bob Pepitone?
Bob Pepitone, retired postal worker out of New Jersey that heard about this thing, and he showed all this memorabilia. He had all these stories about Louis and Keela going back. Anyway, it was a really beautiful event, and then out of that. And it was a cover story of the LA Times calendar section too. Never forget that. And then out of that, we were able to, we wanted to keep it going. And then, yep, as we said, asked Joey, got permission to jump with Joey to back up the band and we got Mr. Kelly Calbos to to open up Monday nights that was dark, surprisingly. And so was Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night. But they gave us the chance to
the Cocoa Bowl. Okay, stop right there. Okay, I would like you to give a visual description of what was Kelbo's and what was the Cocoa Bowl, and how did that all fit into Southern California lounge scene? Could you do that in 5 words?
Sure. Well, I think Senor can tell you more about
Either one of you, you know, I mean.
Well, we could, we both have sort of something to contribute to it, but Kelbo's was a tiki restaurant that was there. Originally, there were a few locations, but the last remaining location was on Pico in West LA. And the Cocoa Bowl, it was a giant dome.
Yeah,
to look like the
inside of a coconut.
Yeah,
it was
so you're underneath this giant coconut dome, and then it was a, you know, it was a showroom, and there was a dance floor, and they had a little DJ booth in the corner where I did the lights and the sound and stuff, and
fun records in between.
Yeah, played records. Yeah, before and after.
You grew up in well, both of you guys did. I always heard Kelbo's was the place that kids got to get drunk for the first time and vomit in the back of the parents' station wagon. It had those mixed cocktails with all the they were sort of notorious.
The blue Hawaiian, the exotic drinks,
Mm-hmm.
They also, it was it opened in 47, so it was like one of the first real tiki bars, Polynesian restaurants, and it's supposedly notorious for inspiring that sequence in the Hanna-Barbera cartoon, the Flintstones, where he gets the ribs at the takeaway.
Really?
Right? I think they had the first takeaway ribs.
Dinosaur ribs, takeaway dinosaur ribs. So Kelbo's was the Monday night regular gig. With
you know, who told me it was Mike Reese, who was a writer producer for The Simpsons. I just moved down to LA, and he was a friend of a friend, and he said, "You guys should play at Kelbo's, and we'll bring in, you know, the Simpsons writers go there, and they used to come in on Monday nights." That's how I found out about Kelbo's. And I think, you know, who was doing a show there was that friend of Eddie Vegas's, who was the guy that he was doing like a tribute show, and it really went badly. He was that notorious lounge singer, Senor, you know who I'm talking about. He was friends with Eddie. Oh my God. But anyway.
I'm trying to remember who that was.
Oh my God. That's where me. But basically, Mr. Kelly was this really amazing character. He was about 80 at the time, and he loved like show business, and he loved owning that place. And his eyes still, I'll never forget. Remember, his eyes just sparkle. And I always thought, that's how I want to be at 80. And he just lost, I think, a fortune investing in machines that dispense beer cans.
Vending machines, right?
Vending machines, until it was found to be illegal, and he lost whatever money they had. And anyway, he always had some crazy idea, so he thought that this thing was great. And I don't know if you guys remember, Mrs. Kelly used to have her sewing club come. There were like these women in their 70s and 80s at the shows too, so it was a mix of
at your show on Monday nights. Yes, and it was really funny because Mr. Kelly was most likely a World War II vet who was most likely stationed in the South Pacific, which is why tiki bars came to be, because the veterans came back and they were informed by what they saw there, and they created these things. So now we're flashing forward like 40 years later, and it's this place where like no one really goes like they once used to. They still they still serve all the bad dietary food and bacon and sweet and sour. And so we did this show, and like, for those of you who don't know, have a context, Joe Cheezee used to do a lot of parody style things. And what I loved, I'll always remember this phrase, genre bashing. So it was almost like you were making fun of the whole notion of lounge singers and
Yeah,
everything
it was
encompassed them.
and there were mashups that the kids call mashups today that we
Right.
like. So a whole lot of love and Love Boat became a whole
Yeah.
lot of Love Boat.
Right.
But you guys held the music together, so it was sort of fun to listen to for the audience. You know, it hung together. You know,
It hung together.
Yeah.
You know, Bill Ungerman.
With he would sing using a wireless microphone. He was a pioneer in his field while on rollerblades on the dance floor underneath the cocoa bowl. Oh,
Right.
but they were like sprayed gold glitter, and sometimes they even had live sparklers on them. So
Yes.
you had to be there to get it. But I mean,
Yeah,
and
that's right.
inevitably you would fall off, and sometimes the crash into the music stands, and the sheet music would go flying everywhere. I mean, it was not planned.
I remember there was one show where Willie basically said, if you bump into me one more time, I'm leaving. And he left.
I almost lost Willie another time when it was right after Prince had those chaps were on MTV. And I cut out in my sequin like 2 holes for my buzz at the very end. The other time Willie was like, I'm out. But you know, it's a funny story that I was telling Senor Joey, my son is dating this woman. I have Sammy Davis, he's 17. He's seeing this girl, and the father goes on a deep dive to find out about me. And there's not a lot, thank
Poor
God.
kid.
But he picks up this LA Times article that when I read it now, I still cringe. At the time, I thought it was really cool. He described it as like a Catholic mass at a punk rock concert, but he says Joey goes into the state, sees crutches and decides to pick them up and then whirly-bird, around while spinning on the skates and lets go of the crutches into the crowd. And everyone thinks it's like, I didn't even care about where they would go. I mean, that was nuts. And remember the flaming cocktails, and there was a lot of.
Oh yeah. No, I mean, you easily
Dangerous.
could have set that room on fire. Think about
how
how there was the thatch roofing in there. Like there were so many flammable materials in that room. It was a
You remember there was an airline commercial, an intro where those guys did, and they talk about using your seat as a shielding device in the case of objects coming into the.
I mean, think about, you could never do that these days. It's
no.
I mean, when we were kids, well, people smoked when they were pregnant. We had no seat belts and all the good stuff. You could smoke on planes. I mean, we really had it good.
Oh, we had it good. And
So,
there's a little broken glass, but no one got hurt.
yeah, exactly. So
No, not at Calbo's.
right. So this is like the basis of what started generating into the LA lounge scene, which encompassed so many different things because it did have that kitschy, genre bashing element for some people. And then other people, it was a straight up surf type of band, like the Bomboras that fit into the Tiki culture. And then there were bands like what I've created with like written arrangements that was more of a tradition of like Henry Mancini, but there was always some cheeky factor in my music that was, it was like good blowing jazz over some like other Arthur Lyman influence and like a kind of a superimposition of genres and things, but there was all.
But the music had to hang together or it was boring to me. Like people just doing a witless parody without the music.
That's true. That's true. And no imagination of the concept, and like, so there was an element there that lasted, like it went on for years because we're talking, this was 91, but by 1994, what happened was there was Combustible Edison and they were around doing this stuff in New York, right? For some years.
They were from Rhode Island, and then and even before that, they moved to Vegas for a while. And
they had the band Christmas.
Yeah. And then the Millionaire, who's one of the leaders of the band, moved here to LA, and we've since became friends. And he was one of the founders of the internet radio station Luxuria Music.
Right.
And so yeah, I mean and then also Capitol did the Ultra Lounge reissues.
Yep.
Where they repackaged all the music from the 50s and 60s, and they did different theme albums and stuff.
Right.
And Esquivel got reissued on RCA, and and all this stuff happened, and through thrift culture, as you said, we discovered the Les Baxter and Martin Denny and Arthur Lyman and all the Exotica stuff, which is a big cornerstone of the lounge revival.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got connected with Leslie Baxter, Les's daughter, and
Right.
and you got the charts and stuff, which was so.
But even before that, there was Korla. Remember when?
Hang on for that. Let's wait just a second for that. Let's hold that thought, because I want to do a little expose on him, if you will, because what you're all of this is like piecing together what was going on and what had been percolating. Also, the California surf culture of the 50s and 60s with surf bands that are now being revived at the same time. You know, more and more of them. So, which fit in with the Tiki culture and the Polynesian restaurants and things like this. In 1994, I used to do a lot of work for a music supervisor and doing film assignments and things. And she said to me one day, you know, there was a movie called Four Rooms with Tarantino did a segment, Robert Rodriguez, 4 different directors, right? And Combustible Edison did the music. And this music supervisor said to me, you know, there's no other current band making this type of music. So like, because I had been doing music for films, I'd also been very into ska revival music at that point and Afro-Cuban music and so forth. She said, if you were to record some of this kind of music, you'd get some action, because Combustible Edison's got the market cornered. And I was like, okay, I'll go and record a few songs. So I made a demo, made 3 songs, and then I made another 3 songs. And so I had 6 songs. And one day, nothing had happened yet. I was like, okay, I made them, but nothing happened. And one day I'm sitting in a swingers restaurant, and John Seidel was sitting there. He was a longtime friend. And he said, hey, Joey, come over here. And he said, I just bought into partnership with this indie label in Seattle, and we want to put out like a lounge album type of thing. Do you have it? You want to do something like that? And I said, well, I have 6 songs already recorded. I could go and create 6 more and have an album. And that's how Cocktails with Joey was birthed. That's what happened. Yeah.
So you had demos before Seidel was even on the scene.
Yeah, I had demos to be used to be placed and licensed into films. And so then Cocktails with Joey came out, and consequently, you know, I ended up with a manager who was plugged into a lot of indie films and also big films. And she got the music from that placed in all kinds of stuff. Plus I got more film work to write music for other films because of it. So that's my little place in the picture here. And, you know, going back to the 50s, like Korla Pandit, let's go back to Korla Pandit. He was considered like exotic and an exotica type of organist. I think he was one of the very first people on live television in 1949, if I stand correct, right? And he was Indian. I want to show a little film clip just to show the people out there who don't know who we're talking about. Korla Pandit, okay? I'm just going to show you a minute of this. This is Korla Pandit. This is probably what, channel 5 or channel 9?
Yeah, KTLA.
KTLA was the first station, I think, in Los Angeles in 1949.
The left hand, boom.
So good. Oh yeah, the left hand. Is that a man or a woman? Can't tell the difference between the boys and the girls anymore. That's what they used to say with the hippies when I was a kid. Anyways, Korla Pandit. Can we just talk about Korla Pandit? Because I mean, I remember sitting with him at backstage at the Exoticon that we opened with. Okay, I'm going to show the flyer once more, and him telling me stories about being in LA in the 1950s and hanging out with people like Marilyn Monroe. And he was an old man back then, so it was a little bit difficult to kind of understand what he was saying. But as far as I know, he was talking about like being at parties with Marilyn Monroe and things. I mean, you guys clocked a lot more time with him. You were friends with him. So can you give me some, like, give everyone the backstory on what that was all about and how did you find him? Because I used to find his records, like fantasy colored vinyl records from the 50s all the time, right? And you guys found him, like.
I think actually, I know, you know, I learned about him through Pat Tierney, and Pat Tierney and Stuart Sweezy, I think, did a concert with Korla a couple of late 80s. Isn't that right, Senor?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So Tierney was suggesting, you know, check him out, and then Senor found out that there was a wake for Bela Lugosi at this place where Korla was going to be playing or was going to be there, right?
Right. Wait, he was already dead though, Bela Lugosi, right?
Yeah. It was just a
tribute.
Yeah, it was like an anniversary of his death type of thing or something.
Right. Not a wake, a memorial.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know where it was. The only thing I remember, it was in a place that had a 12-step meeting because Senor Amor and I, who were always looking for opportunities, saw these like really cute girls go to this room, and we just decided to follow them. And then we sit down in a circle, and it comes around, you know, we realize it's a 12-step meeting, and then it goes to Senor, and he has to stand up or speak.
No, it came to you first. It came to you first, and because of your lay ministry background, you pulled it off, and you were like, no, and you started reading from the book. And I started cracking up. I was like, I just was so totally unexpected. Didn't mean to be disrespectful in any way, shape, or form, but was just.
And we got kicked out.
Stuck in this thing, and we didn't know how to get out, and then it came.
I remember the guy was like, "That's so not cool, man."
Yeah,
so
no, the guy was like, "Hey, man, these people are spilling their guts out here. You can't just come in here and do that." And I just felt like 2 inches tall, and we skulked out of there. But that was the same day. It was a coffee shop on Melrose. That's where it was. And I forgot that it was connected to the Korla thing. Like, that's so
Wait a minute, but
wild.
you were a Jesuit, correct? Or
yes.
I was a Jesuit lay minister. Like, I worked for the Jesuits doing peace and justice work. Okay. Like, I was hired as a Jesuit volunteer. I was never ordained and never all that.
I just want to give the viewers, the three viewers here, some context.
So I was working on like South African, Central America, and to this day have a connection, even though I'm not religious. And my lovely wife's bringing me a glass of water. Look at that.
Even though you're not religious, okay.
That's nice.
This is a great story. Please continue. Like a 12-step meeting at a coffee shop.
And that was part of the shtick at the Joey Cheezee show. I was trying to act like I was this wannabe Jesuit that didn't quite fit in, and I was trying to find my peeps, you know, because the Jesuits used to talk about embracing your charisms, and I thought, well, what if, you know, to serve the kingdom of God, I thought, what if your charisms were singing and rollerblading, and then where would that go? And that's how that was sort of the backstory. But anyway, we struck up a conversation with Korla because I think the show had just started and invited him to come down and perform. And at the time, Korla we didn't put all the pieces together. He was probably homeless. He was probably living on the couch with his sister in Culver City. It was really hard to get in touch with Korla because he was couch surfing, but he would randomly he would come to the show, and we did video bits, and he would participate in some stuff. He was trying to get his career back on track. And he did do this HBO special that eventuated a horrible thing that Korla was stuck into. But he was such a good sport. But what we didn't realize too was, he sort of fit into the vibe of the show, because I think everyone knew that he wasn't an Indian mystic, but no one knew what he was. But everyone was willing to suspend disbelief, and his backstory was never an issue.
But wait a minute, but he was like Midwestern or something, right? Didn't he have a Midwestern accent?
He was an African American.
He was
red,
what?
And
he was African American.
RJ, when researching a book on South Central LA, discovered he met a musician on the scene that talked about this guy that went on to wear a turban. He's like, "Are you talking about Korla Pandit?" And he put two and two together and then did the research. Now, we were really involved with Korla because when Senor and I were living together, Korla's son used to live with us, would stay. And I think I gave him my car once. Do you remember that? He would work on it. Mm-hmm. John. And the story with what was really going on that was fascinating was the real story is, and it no one knows for sure, but Korla was married to a white woman, which was illegal in California in the 40s, right? And so they had to hide his ethnicity from the public, really, because an African American man wouldn't have had a show on TV at that point.
And the other thing too is that because in order to join the union was really had the musicians union had like a limited number of slots for African Americans.
So it was segregated actually until I think 1953.
That's right.
And so he couldn't join the union as an African American. So that was also supposedly part of the reason that he adopted this Indian persona.
But there are a couple mysteries about Korla that still hold up to this day that no one's figured out. So obviously he was playing organ for Beanie and Cecil, the puppet show. He knew people at the station. And it's likely in him, she was an art director. She did the production design, which was amazing. And all the dancers. Then
please back up, because you froze for a moment.
Yeah.
We lost you. He was the organist for the puppet show Time for Beanies, right? Which was before the cartoons of Beanie Boy and
Correct. Yeah. And so now what probably happened was there was a movie where an African American man was sort of faking his way as a sheik, and they think that might have inspired the idea for the TV show. But the TV show, KTLA is mum on it. No one really acknowledges what happened because they clearly knew who he was, right? So they hid it from the public. They didn't allow him to speak, really. So there was, because that would have given it away too.
Well, wait a minute. But when you were breaking up a moment ago, you mentioned someone he had met there, a woman or a
art director.
Yeah, I missed that little part of it.
His wife.
Yeah.
His wife.
She worked there.
Name escapes me. Pearl, I want to say. His wife was the art director, I believe, on Beanie and Cecil. I believe that's how they met. And she was the art director for the Korla Pandit show, which became a series. When he left KTLA, they didn't renew his contract. Rather famously, brought in Liberace, the Snyder scripts bought it. I'm butchering the story. He left to do these shorts that were these interstitial pieces that were dropped in when the local affiliates needed to, kill time. And that's how these went out all over the world. There were these beautifully shot films. You were showing one of them.
Right.
And then that company brought on Liberace after Korla left. But that no one knows who at KTLA really conspired with those guys. The other fascinating thing is that his own sons, who Senor and they again times John and Shari,
yeah,
never knew there, and people feel really weird about that. But imagine that you tell this, you have this myth going out, and you tell the kids you're really not Indian and your father, this is your heritage. And I think because they just didn't know when to break it, they thought, and they probably didn't want it to be exposed, they kept it up until Shari actually passed, not knowing, and John only learned about it when RJ's article came out in Los Angeles Magazine.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. And then there's also a great documentary about Korla.
Really?
And you're in it, Josie. What's the name of the film again?
Gosh, Korla Pandit. I don't know the name of the film.
Yeah, if you look for a Korla Pandit documentary, I'm sure it'll come up. But it's a really amazing story, and they did a lovely tribute to Korla, and really telling his whole story and where he came from, and he was a child prodigy with the piano, and yeah, it's a really fascinating story.
Well, that's interesting that you mentioned too his story, because Babs Gonzalez, the bebop singer, moved out to LA from the East Coast. In his memoirs, he said he changed his name to an Indian name and started wearing a turban and got a job as, I think it was Errol Flynn's chauffeur. And so everyone treated him respectfully because they thought he was from India.
Right.
It's horrible, but what a genius mind. I mean, he was so smart in how he did things. And here's a little ad for Korla Pandit, appearing November 6th, plus Wonderful World of Joey at none other than House of Blues. Like,
that was a really fun show.
Do you remember what happened at that show too? This is classic Joey. Korla didn't have management, so people were always trying to work with him someone wanted to manage him for that show basically, and they took all the money, and then there was unknowingly, and we didn't have any money to pay the band, and I had to chase that down. It was such a debacle. But there are a lot of funny stories like that. Korla, we would get to hang out with. He told amazing, really played the mystic thing up, because he really did. He believed in music as this universal opportunity to connect.
Language of love, essentially. Yeah, he really believed that music was the international language of love, and his big line that he loved the ladies, and the ladies loved him because he was super charming. And he would always go to a woman. He's like, "You're from Venus, aren't you?" That was his big opener, and it worked every time.
He got an opportunity to, what's the Long On John's record label said, if you can get him in the studio, I'll do a record with you. And he gave us the money up front, and we could never get in the studio. And then we did this drive-in concert called Azusa-Palooza where he played, and everyone snuck in, and we lost our shirt. Do you remember that? I was SIR. Charlene Nichols, his ex-husband, was there. We had no money to pay. And then we got an opportunity to do produce a song for one of the compilation tracks that someone was doing. And we got him in the studio.
Hologram. It was basically they were sending it out to music supervisors and stuff.
It was the publishing company. That's right.
Yeah.
And we only got him there. That was the only way we could make sure that he showed up was our friend Robin was able to get him to stay at her house that night and then drive him to the studio, because you could never. In fact, we did a show, Joey at Bimbo's 365 Club in San Francisco in mid 90s. And he wasn't going to show up about an hour and a half before the show for some reason no one knew, as the headliner. And we just barely got him there. And we're not going to be able to do any more shows. It was just, it was tough working with him, but he was such a great guy to hang out with. Oh my God.
What is he, 80 by that time? I mean, this guy was like, probably, he was.
Had to have been. Had to have been.
Yeah, and you know, when we talk about like the people that were famous for hanging out at the, you know, Tiny Nailers in the 50s, James Dean and Vampira, and they had a whole little, what did they call it, the Midnight Crew or something? I can't remember the name, but he was kind of like in that whole mix. He used to tell stories about people like.
And then he actually, we did these little gigs that I could show him to. Someone wanted to have him at a party in the Valley, at a birthday party, and the writers for Ed Wood were there, and he got to do a cameo as, you know, himself in the Ed Wood movie, which was amazing.
Right.
How did that even happen? Like, how do you even get showed up to the set at the right time?
Yeah.
He was off at that point. His son came down to stay with him to wrangle him.
Real money there, real money. So tell me about this Azusa Palooza. Is this the city of Azusa with a drive-in theater? That's why you did it? And like a lot of bands, or I somehow missed out on this.
Yeah, we had some bands play there, and we showed a Roger Corman movie, and
had a scene with Citizen Pots and Pans Orchestra, from the Azusa Knots or something, and Davy Allen and the Arrows, and Pleasant Gaiman's band, the Ringling Sisters.
Right.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so you're bringing back memories. There was a party bus you guys used to do.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Wow. You go to like different exotica places like the Bahuka restaurant and places that were still around.
And the trails, that's right. And in fact, on one of those occasions, we brought Korla on the bus as our special guest. We walked into the scene at the trails. It was all blue hairs. And that was the fun thing, because it was a bunch of, you know, hipsters from LA going into these, you know, organ bars along Route 66. We went as far as Palm Springs. I think Vegas, actually, one time.
Yeah.
But Korla walks in. Do you remember that night, Senor, when he took over for Jim McCune at the organ?
I barely, but people went bananas, right?
Oh my God, yeah. That we were able to bring Korla. That was really fun too. And that was another way of these cultures coming together. It was amazing.
And
that's right.
Eddie Vegas, who was a fixture at the Dresden Room, we became friends with him, and he became part of the scene. So Eddie and Korla were palsy, and like Joey had them do the intro video to his show where we pick up Korla and we pick up Eddie, and then we go to Kelbo's and we have this rat puppet, Topo Formaggio.
That Tierney worked, that smoke.
Oh my gosh. You know, this needs to be a whole other installation of this where we can screen share some of these videos and things.
Yeah.
Super fun, and actually do it go live where people can do a Q&A, because, you know, there are people that don't know, like, who is Eddie Vegas? Eddie Vegas drove a school bus for like mentally challenged children. That was his gig, but he was a complete lush, right? Who wore like a bad toupee and sang like with Marty and Elaine, who were still probably at the
Dresden. They are. They just
remember how many measures you would cut? I don't know.
40th.
Joey, do you remember the band used to take bets on how many beats he dropped? Like
because this guy couldn't sing in time, and he would like jump forward or he would lag behind, so the band was constantly like adjusting to keep in the right place where he was within the song, because he had
Skip Heller brilliantly called him the John Lee Hooker of lounge for that reason. He would just come in.
Yeah, because it was always a surprise, and like
it was always a surprise.
Always a surprise, and you know, for those of you who know what we're talking about, you know what we're talking about. But there's some people who don't know, and maybe you've never even heard of the movie, but a movie called Swingers, and there's a scene within the movie Swingers that takes place at the Dresden with Marty and Elaine. So there's all this culture, and also
Yeah.
that was going on at the time. And also, I want to like go dial this back to like the bus tours. These are places along in the like deep San Gabriel Valley or probably
Yeah.
all through the valley. These are places that have been around since the 40s, 50s, 60s that were like cocktail lounges and steakhouses that had like the house piano bar player or the organist where people could
Right,
sit and
right, which
sing.
doesn't exist. I know.
These places had gone on until the advent of karaoke. And there were
Right.
two things that killed them, karaoke, and then the people eventually died who were patronizing them. Like people, when we were going to these places,
Yeah.
they were in their 60s, 70s, and 80s.
Right.
They were old people that were like World War II era people. And I grew up in the San Gabriel Valley. So we had the Bahuka, we had
Okay.
TNJs, the Embers. My mom and her friends used to go to those places. And
Right.
as an adult, I used to go and get to go with them. But those places are all gone. They're
Yeah.
probably like glass condominiums that are unoccupied right by now or something, like, because no one can afford to rent them.
Yeah, a couple are still around, and Joey started the bus crawls, the lounge crawls as we call them. So we did them together, and then I guess you moved out of town or something, Joey. See, and then my friend Julian and I did the tours, and we would go to all over suburbia. And
But what was really cool about the early bus crawls, Joey, was that I figured out that there was this hippie cruise bus called the Green Tortoise. Half of it was a bed because people would sleep,
right.
And then we had these banquettes. So they had a turnaround, and they weren't doing anything for Saturday night, so we'd rent the thing out. Took it to Vegas twice. You could just party. There was a sound system and video, and it was an amazing place to way to travel. And then you'd show up at these places until I think there were a couple fights. I think the Green Tortoise eventually had enough of it. There was there were a couple few fights that broke out. I remember it was like that was it only happened once, but it was enough to kind of
lounge brawling. Yeah, I've heard of
that. What's so
brawling.
funny is that totally escaped my mind. Like I don't recall that. And there were times when there should have been fights, but there weren't. Because
I remember almost getting my ass kicked and having to go up I mean, these guys. So what would happen, Joe? Most of the people thought it was really cool. You 40, these young people from LA coming,
and we're all dressed up.
Yeah,
we're all wearing like suits and cocktail
But I'll
dresses.
never forget one time this guy really wanted to go at me for just being, didn't like the kids coming in, and we had to approach him. We had a cool off period, and then he was there the next time, and I went up to him and shook his hand, and it was fine. For the most part, it was really like these worlds colliding that, there's not an opportunity for intergenerational contact. It's even worse today. But how often do you get a chance to party with someone, a couple generations up from you? It was magical when it worked.
It was totally magical, and the people were generally so nice and were excited to have fresh blood. And we'd come in there and all at once, dressed up, and they'd just be like, what's going on?
Right.
And they would always want to know what sort of occasion it was, like if it was some special event or,
right.
Wasn't the Cacophony Society kind of hinged upon this as well in a way?
They did a show. They sponsored a show with Korla and our band, and
Wow.
at the old roller rink, at the Glendale Moonlight Roller.
Oh,
rink,
Dominic's Moonlight Rollerway.
Wow.
But we did a couple of shows. There's some other things. You're right. The Cacophony Society was involved. Like I think they did something with Eddie and Korla on another occasion too.
My
those
God.
guys were so funny. God, I forgot about the Cacophony Society.
Yeah, I mean, for those of you who don't know who they are, one of the things they're noted for, well, there's a whole documentary about them,
Yeah.
but they were the people that created Burning Man before it was a thing, right? It started out on like a beach somewhere with about maybe 20 people. I don't know. Like, you know, they probably did it again this year with about 20 people on a beach.
But they were notorious for pranks. Like they would line up like 40 clowns along a bus route, and then finally the bus route, you know, no more clowns, you know, or they started the marauding drunk Santa Claus. This is
I didn't know
show up at the
that's
mall.
where the drunk Santa thing came from. The frat boy annoying drunk Santa thing. They did what they went to the Scientology Center in Hollywood when the night Santa Claus was going to be there with all the kids lined up, and they all came up dressed as Santa Claus, waited in line to sit on Santa's lap.
Right.
One at a time, and it caused a really bad
right. Well, they would get weather balloons, and they would they did this thing out of Silver Lake where they would descend these different, and the whole idea was to get spotted as UFOs, but people, you know, crazy contraptions is weather balloons in the different. They were amazing. And Reverend Al was the big mastermind when we were there. That was some great stuff.
Who's that? Who did you say? Reverend Al?
Yeah, Reverend Al. Mm-hmm.
God, yeah. You know, when you say like the scene started tapering down or kind of came to a close, like for that bubble of time. And
gosh, it's the swingers thing, you know, like when the swing dance thing came into fashion, that sort of, I mean, it was sort of connected to it, but it moved it in a little different direction a bit.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, by the late 90s, I think the reissue stuff was still continuing, you know, and record, I mean, they're still putting stuff out.
It never really stopped as in a sense as a culture. I think it never really ended. What I saw was that, you know, you had people that came from punk rock in the late 70s, then the outgrowth of post-punk and ska and mod and the what was it, the different scenes, surf music, Latin, jazz, all this stuff, and rock and all this stuff, right? And like, so many of these people over the years who were only say into one specific thing back then grew to be into all these kinds of music because there's such quality and honesty about all of it, you know, and some sort of so a lot of it has rebellion about it, but you know, I just found it's so interesting. I mean, where do we go from here?
Yeah, and then like you were saying, he is that out of like the rockabilly scene, then came the swing scene, and then it kind of, that kind of grew up, and that was a big deal. I mean, that popped up, and you had some bands that that were featured in swingers, and then they went on to have some pretty decent careers.
Yeah. You know what, also it's interesting to know, I mean, this is a lot of this music, I mean, we heard it growing up, or, you know, the music we heard from our parents were informing us of swing music, or, you know, lounge and exotica music, or stories of our elders from World War II and the Depression era. So like, you can't really expect a new generation to start doing this because their parents weren't and grandparents weren't really informing them about what caused us to do all this stuff.
Right.
You know, that's how I'm seeing it. I mean, the other day I was speaking to someone who's 28 and she didn't know who Brian Setzer is.
Oh, really?
That's, yeah. So it's like, hey, you can't expect that every 28-year-old to know, you know, but it's just interesting to know, like, wow, okay, you know, so here we are. We have the technology. Everyone, Joe C. He is joining us from Australia. What part of Australia are you?
Melbourne. Melbourne.
Melbourne. And so, and how many years have you been there now?
Gosh, 8.5.
Yeah.
Wow, it's been that long?
Yeah, and you know what? There are no cocktail lounges in Australia. You have pubs, but like, because I was thinking, you know, there's no place to do a, but it's just not in their vernacular even to understand this. It's
My friend in Sydney had one that was an old one. Actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, there's a guy did a tiki bar.
Yeah. A guy, please go ahead.
What was that?
I was going to say Robert Lopez played down here at a tiki bar, and he got me a booking, and we did a show. I put together a band there, and that place ended up closing. Fantastic place called the Luau. Yeah, there's, you know, the tiki thing it's such a uniquely American take, you know, on that. There is, I mean, we're in Asia here. So there's like down my block, there's a place called the King of Tonga, which, you know, is sort of a take on, you know, Polynesian culture, but it's much drier and straighter. It just doesn't have sort of.
I will tell you guys, I'm here in, Senor Amor is in LA, and I'm in Astoria, Oregon, and right down the street from me, there's an art gallery by these people that are ceramicists, and it's called Tiki. You might know who they are.
Oh, yeah.
They're here, okay?
Oh, I didn't realize that.
With all their stuff, and the room adjacent, their kid, because these are people that are our age, their grown kids are starting a tiki venue next door that'll probably be done by the time COVID is finished. Like,
I hope so.
By the time we're all finished. But I mean, it's amazing because they're steeped in the tiki culture, and for them, they were ceramicists, but then they doing a niche thing, but then they found that they could really make money as ceramicists by making tiki mugs and such, and they've done really well. But I mean, it's beautiful what they've done here, and because we have a lot of buildings that are empty storefronts that are, you know, 80, 90-year-old storefronts. Some of them are 100.
That's so cool.
So they open this place, and it's like, wow, most of their business is mail order, which is perfect for them, you know. But the showroom is great, so people are doing this, you know. Somehow they're doing it. So yeah, I have a place to DJ now. One of these days when COVID finishes in about 1.5 years.
That'll be great.
Yeah, so we'll, you know, maybe we should all like reconvene for a live, you know.
And it would have been the 20th anniversary of Tiki Oasis this past summer.
Wow.
But because of COVID, they didn't have it. But they're doing a virtual one this coming weekend, a Tiki Oasis in Arizona.
Wow.
For Halloween weekend. And they're doing all this virtual stuff.
Well, they should just do a live one in Sturgis. Right? I mean, they could get away with it there.
Exactly.
Biker tiki like mashup.
Oh God.
Davey Allen and the Arrows, you know. Oh my God. Well,
Davey Allen and the Arrows would be perfect to play.
They would be perfect to play.
Yeah. So I guess it's time to wrap it up for now. I could go on for hours, but I think it's time to cut it off and talk about a volume 2.
Yeah.
Thanks for doing this, Joe.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for making this happen.
Yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in. There will be more to follow. Let's do a live one with people next time.
Sure.
Okay.
You know,
yeah, so people can ask questions and
exactly. And you know, let's digitize some flyer art or things like that we could screen share and make it even more spectacular.
Yeah, maybe there's some old Joey Cheezee video that we can.
The theme building.
Yeah, wait a minute. Like, put that up here. What is that?
Yeah, put it closer.
Can you see it?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's great. This is another from Pat Tierney. It's a fake. You know, build your own. You know how you got model kits as a kid, and you just had a bunch of shit that you couldn't really do anything with. That's what Sam did. It's got a sponge and some popsicle sticks, and evidently, if it all goes right, that's what it looks like.
Oh my God! I have the Eddie Vegas hangover helper pills.
Yeah, the hangover helper.
You got him. Hangover helper. Oh my gosh. Oh my.
And that
What is in there? It's just candy that's in there.
Here's a nativity scene made out of cocktail stuff.
And
Look at that. That's
cherries and olives.
Jesus's halo is a little lemon wedge. I don't know if you can see that. And yeah. Beautiful stuff. We'll do that next time. We'll do that properly.
All right. Well, ciao for now, everybody, and see you on the flip side. Thanks. And great to see you. We'll
Nice to see you too.
Yeah. Thanks. Ciao.